All right, welcome on into the Falls Count Anywhere podcast. Charlie Turner here, along with Chris DiCarlo and John Rustino. Gentlemen, how are we doing this weekend here on May the 13th of 2023?
Doing good. Perfect weather, right?
Yeah.
Best time of year, man. This is one of the best times of year. You get a little cool weather at night. You sleep well. It's not too hot during the day, so you're not sweating your nuts off. It's beautiful, man. I love it. So it's a great time of year here in Western New York, here in Niagara Falls on the Falls Count Anywhere podcast. But of course, we're always talking classic wrestling here on this show, and we're welcoming back a couple of guests that are becoming a couple of regulars on the show, if you will. Chris, go ahead and give these gentlemen their proper introduction.
Well, back by popular demand, I've gotten a lot of feedback. I told you guys this will be a monthly feature here on the Falls Count Anywhere podcast. We'd like to welcome in not only AWA, but a great wrestling historian, our friend, Mr. George Schire from Minnesota.
Hey, good morning, guys. Great to be back.
And our other friend from Manitoba, Canada, Toronto area, knowing Mr. Wes Maidment.
Howdy, boys. Thank you very much for having me back on. Hey, George.
Good to see you, Wes.
Just like I said at the beginning there, back by popular demand, I've gotten a lot of feedback. People love this setup and this show, and we're going to do it once a month, guys, here.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's like we have a faction here. We're rolling 5 strong. We need like a faction name, maybe we could think of something for the next show. I mean, we're rolling 5 deep here. Who's going to mess with us?
Something.
Well, the 5 horsemen won't cut it.
Holding up this.
All right. Well, like we said, we have 4 clips, and then we'll go around the horn and talk about them. And John, if you will, let's roll the first one.
All right, let's see what we got. It's random, so who knows what's going to happen.
Okay.
My God, here we go.
Oh, Billy Red Lions. Here's a classic for sure.
There's the Billy Red I remember. Don't you dare miss it.
Yes, there's the great Billy Red that we know for sure.
Wait, and Chris, you always mentioned too, man. We had the luxury here in Niagara Falls, New York, to get the Canadian channels and to see Billy Red all the time.
Yep. Oh, here we go. Oh,
Oh yeah, the hot rod with a nice slap there.
so Billy Red Lions, the great Billy Red Lions, right, guys?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so sad because I think in today's wrestling talk, Billy doesn't get the credit he truly deserves for what a great wrestler he was. And of course, we saw later on as a commentator, absolutely good there.
Yeah.
I'll tell you guys, and then maybe Wes, you can chime in here. When I was collecting programs back in the 60s, Boyd Pierce down in Texas, who was one of the great wrestling announcers down in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, he would send me the weekly programs from the 2 cities, and I started seeing Billy Red Lions in the programs. And then I was getting programs earlier from Syracuse or Buffalo territory, when Lions was there. And of course, he was on these Texas cards. And I don't know what it was, but this was one wrestler that I just, as a kid, I always wanted to see. And Billy Red Lions, I think it's just the name.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, in 1968, in August, here comes on TV Dr. X, who was Dick Beyer. He had a 2-week stint as AWA champion. And on this particular night on TV, after the card on TV, he was going to defend in a rematch the title to Vern Gagne. So his opponent on TV, making an AWA debut, no fanfare, no announcement ahead of time. And normally we looked for jobbers. And here's Marty O'Neill from Hamilton, Ontario, 238 pounds, Billy Red Lyons. Honest to God, I just about had a stroke. And he beat Dr. X on the TV match with a figure 4 leg lock.
Wow.
The doc, and of course, those were non-title matches on TV. The doc was livid. I've got a match with Vern Gagne tonight to defend the title. They bring in some ringer. You know, they don't know each other. Well, you know, behind the scenes, and nobody knew it, or few, if anybody, knew it at the time, Dick Beyer and Billy Red Lyons were real life brothers-in-law. And
Wow.
this was Vern's way of bringing Billy in. So he goes and loses the title that night to Vern back. Well, he's in this ready-made feud now with this newcomer, this nobody, this ringer, as Doc would call him, that, you know, he rattled me before my important title defense. That's the reason I lost. I want this man. Who does he think he is? You know, in the typical Destroyer Dr. X voice. Who does he think coming in here? I'm going to and they had about a 6-month, 7-month program of matches, and then on to tag team matches. But there they were, the brothers-in-law.
Go ahead, Wes.
They, I wish I could have seen him wrestle at an earlier age, because he was talented. He was good looking. He was sharp. He was good on the mic. And he it's funny, as we look at him now, he looks like a shrimp. The guy was like at least 6'1", and he was a solid, nice looking 230, 240 pounds. He was like kind of sinewy even, maybe, right? And he looked great. He looked fantastic. And like you said, George, that headlined Texas for a long time. Not necessarily headlining AWA, but high on the cards for a long time.
He headlined, Wes.
Yeah.
Those matches with Doc, they had, you know, around the horn. They had match, rematch, another stipulation match, etc. And then in March of '69, so we're about 7 months or 8 months into his run here, they brought in, or Red Bastien came back home. And he was from Minneapolis. And they hooked up the Redheads right away, Lyons and Bastien. And then they had a run of tag team matches against the Doc. We had Double X in here for a while with Dr. X, Jim Osborne under the mask. We had the Vachon brothers. The Redheads went against them. Hennig, Larry Hennig, Lars Anders. I mean, the Redheads were over huge. He was main eventing all the time. He even had a title shot with Vern Gagne.
Okay.
Wow.
Babyface versus babyface.
Oh, wow.
And when you add Red Bastien, you get two guys who could really, really wrestle.
Yes.
Really wrestle.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, very well schooled in making their opponent look good, but also being strong enough, as they say, strong enough that look good but still lose.
Right. And, you know, I saw them in 3 matches, the Redheads. I saw them in 3 matches against the Chain Gang, the Dillinger Chain Gang, which was Don Fargo and originally Frank. Well, it was Jack Dillinger, Don Fargo, Jack Dillinger, Frank Dillinger, who was Kenny Mack.
Yeah.
We saw 2 matches with them. And then the third time around, after Frank Dillinger was shot in Chicago, or in Wisconsin, ended up losing his leg. We had Jim Dillinger, brother Jim, come in, and that was Paul Dupre, and who was also Chris Colt.
Yeah.
And he was the third Dillinger brother. But their matches were incredible. Oh my God. Absolutely, Billy got a huge push here. And
that it's not like they hadn't wrestled before, because Dick Beyer and Billy had wrestled in upstate New York for years for Martinez, right?
Yep.
And,
Well,
and
they were
they actually owned a piece. They owned Rochester for a bit. They bought it off of Martinez.
right.
Dick Beyer, Fritz von Erich, and Billy Red Lions owned Rochester. Quote, turned it around and sold it back to him.
I think wasn't Ilio DiPaolo part of the ownership too?
I don't know about DiPaolo. I'm sure he was, because he was a stay-at-home guy by this time. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember that because when I was talking to Beyer one time, he had mentioned that when Ilio and he had Lions in there, but he said when Ilio and I had part of the territory, that was kind of his deal. Yeah, and he had his famous restaurant there, DiPaolo did.
Yeah.
Still does, right, Charlie? We know Dennis very well.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you guys have ever been to Elio DiPaolo's restaurant. First of all, great food. Dennis DiPaolo, the son of Elio, awesome guy. I've known him on and off for the past 20 years, social media and in person here and there. But what a great person. I don't know if you guys never had a chance to visit the restaurant, if you're ever in this area, the entire restaurant is decked out in wrestling memorabilia throughout the restaurant. It's pretty sweet. You go towards the coat room and there's like random pictures of Elio and wrestling somebody. And it's just all this random wrestling memorabilia that they have. And they just updated their front room. It's now called the Buffalo Room, where they themed it around the Bills and the Sabres, but they also have a lot of Elio DiPaolo and Dick the Destroyer memorabilia in there as well. It's pretty sweet.
Nice.
I had a chance to sit at the banquet with at Cauliflower Alley Club one year with Dick Beyer and Ilio DiPaolo, or not Ilio, Dennis DiPaolo was at our table. So I had a chance to chat with him for the evening. Great guy. Yeah, he loved hearing some stories about his dad because his dad worked in Minneapolis in the early 60s.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, John,
go.
John, you and I, of course, remember Maple Leaf Wrestling every Saturday afternoon and that golden voice. We didn't even know Billy Red was a wrestler back then, right?
No, I don't recall I ever, maybe one time at Memorial Auditorium when I was very young. I'm like in the 77, 78. Possibly, I think he filled in for someone once as I was there. I believe he might have. And then, because even then I remember Ernie the Cat Ladd filling in. And I forget.
Mm-hmm.
I remember because he filled in for someone. He might have filled in for, oh God, it might have been not Flair, but it was someone big. It was a big, it was like the main event. But here comes Ernie Ladd, so everyone was kind of mad because it's Ladd, but he's big and huge, and it ended up being great. So, but yeah, Billy Red, the voice of my probably our childhood a little bit.
Yeah.
I like how in the clip, as he swats Billy Red Lions, he hands him the microphone. So Riker's got the microphone in his hand.
Yeah.
What technique, eh?
Classic.
I've got 3 pictures. I can see them in the hallway as I tell you this. I've got 3 pictures on the wall, 8x10s, of Billy Red Lions holding the microphone, and he's interviewing the Destroyer. 3 different poses in the pictures.
Oh, that's awesome.
And here about 2 years ago, talking with Kurt Beyer, he had not seen those photos. He said, "Oh my gosh!" So I sent him copies of them.
Nice.
But, yeah, I love them. They're pretty cool. Wes, you mentioned about Billy being good on the microphone. Even as a wrestler, he was good as a babyface, getting that promo over. And a lot of times when he would come out with the Redheads team, he would be probably talking a little bit more than Red Bastien did. And Red was okay on the mic. I mean, he was good as a babyface. The other thing I remember about Billy Red, we in the early years in the 50s, him and Beyer teamed up as a babyface team. This is pre-Destroyer, of course.
Yeah.
Beyer and Lions. And I don't know back then, I don't recall that they had acknowledged any family relationship or anything. But of course, when the Destroyer came on board, then that was forgotten. But they were tag team champions together, Destroyer and Billy Red Lions out in California. They held the Los Angeles WWA tag team title. And then they also held the championship in Japan together. And then when they went to Texas, they were enemies. The Destroyer was on the evil side and Billy on the good guy side. And then back here in Minnesota, when Destroyer was now doing the X routine.
I remember in Toronto, this had been a bit before John and Chris's time, that when he came back, and I don't know if it was coming back from the AWA or from Texas, and he was a surprise partner for Dewey, and they ended up being the Crusaders, the masked guys.
Right.
And yeah, they got tired because they wrestled against the Kelly twins and the Love Brothers basically all the time. But there's still great matches. Who wouldn't want to work against the Love Brothers, right? It's like instant heat. But yeah, it was a big deal. And he came back, I guess he came back home, and he just stayed. And I met him once at a book signing, and he was so gracious and so nice, beyond which he'd even, he looks like a really nice guy. You know, on TV you see them. He was just such a great guy. We chatted for quite a few minutes. It was really, really nice to talk with him. He was getting on in years by that time, but yeah, he was just a super talent. To watch him wrestle, he was so smooth, very smooth.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the Crusaders. I'm thinking that was around the later 70s when they did
that was like 74 to about 77.
Yep. So I think Billy Red was coming off of, because after he left the AWA in 1970, he had went with Watts to Mid-South when Bill Watts left the AWA, and Billy left pretty much at the same time. He was down there with Bill Watts, and they also teamed down there together, and they had been an AWA team together, Watts and Lyons. Yeah, and then he was with Tom Jones for a while down there, and then I think that's when he headed home, as you call it.
Yeah,
and probably winding down his career a little bit.
Yeah, and still a tag team wrestler then, because he had morphed into more of a tag team guy, than the singles. And there's lots of pictures with him with the Mid-South belts around his waist.
Yes. I met Billy Red Lyons in kind of a weird way when you talk about what a great guy he was, or just an average guy. It was in 1969 in the summer, again with Red Bastien. I went into the locker room with Red Bastien. And back then, it's a long story. You fans didn't get to do that. But I was in there with Red, and Billy was in there, Lyons, and Red called him over. He said, "Billy, come here. Let's get a picture with our manager." And it was me. So I have an 8x10 now as a 19-year-old, 18-year-old kid, whatever I was, with the two redheads behind me, and I'm sitting on a chair. And I told Red, I said, that was pretty funny. He says, yep, and I had them both sign the pictures later on. But that's how I met Billy. And then, of course, I knew Doc, or Dick, as I always call it Doc, but I knew Dick Beyer, and the rest of it was history with that. So good guy.
Very cool.
Man, I loved him.
Very nice. John, let's roll with our second one here. Oh, these are our odd tag team matches here. We have Harley Race and Larry the Axe Henning was against the Funk Brothers. Now we see Andre the Giant Hacksaw Jim Duggan against Kamala and the Missing Link.
Oh my God, the Missing Link.
Dewey Robinson. Yeah, talk about Mid-South Houston. This is it.
Dewey's my favorite.
Here's a rare one, guys. The British Bulldogs against the Rock and Roll Express.
Nice.
Here we have there's the Macho Man and Lanny against the Fabulous Ones. Oh, remember this, John. King Kong Bundy, Crusher Blackwell against the Road Warriors.
Oh.
Here we go. The Sheep Herders, Bushwhackers against the older Moondogs.
The Moondog, yeah. No mistake in this, dude.
And here we go, Charlie. Andre the Giant and the Giant Baba against Axe and Smash the Demolition.
The real Twin Towers, right? If you ask me. Look at that.
Yeah.
Look at the size of that team.
Really?
Demolition. Wow, that is awesome. Where did this take place? Is this in Japan?
This was, Japan.
Awesome.
And here we're going to see the end of the match, if you will. And here comes the giant. Bang.
Now, Chris, does this tie into Andre becoming the giant machine during that
No,
those years there, or was that before that?
that was Andre winding down his wrestling days.
It was after that. Okay, gotcha.
But lot of great, crazy, odd tag team matches there, right, guys?
Mm-hmm.
Those
Interesting.
Boondogs, man. Those big yellow beards.
To see Dewey as the Link, then that was the most bizarre, one of the most bizarre changes I think has ever been in wrestling. Nobody knew, absolutely nobody knew. It was so weird.
I just found out 3 years ago, I think. Remember, Chris, when you told me? I never knew that, and I love Dewey Robertson always.
I thought he just kind of faded away and stopped wrestling in the mid '80s, and look what happened! What a great, even a better career.
Transformation like crazy. Everyone likes Dewey. I don't know why you can't like Dewey. Dewey was a pretty good guy. I talked with him a couple of times. Luckily enough, I saw him once at another book signing, and I showed him a little clipping bulletin I had, and he signed it, Dewey, the Missing Link Robertson, which is really cool. But yeah, great talent, great physicality, and because he was getting older, he just morphed into that quote no action kind of guy, no wrestling moves, lots of action. But yeah, he was a big guy.
Oh my God!
Well, and he had gotten a lot bigger as Dewey or as Link than what he was when he was still doing his own name.
Yeah.
I had a chance only to talk with Dewey Robertson, or as Missing Link. I talked with him again at Cauliflower. It wasn't too long before he passed away. And I didn't know him well, but I had a chance to talk with him. I bought his book at Cauliflower.
Okay.
And, I enjoyed talking to him about his Crusader days. And like most wrestlers, it's always unique. Sometimes when you talk to them as a fan and you share something about another identity or another territory or something, they're always intrigued, like, how did you know that? Or I didn't think anybody even remembered that, Yeah. And a lot of the wrestlers were that way, that's the reason they would talk to you, because you knew something that was important to them. You weren't just coming up and saying, hi, Dewey, I'm a fan.
Yeah.
And you had, you had a couple of interesting oddities on these tag teams here. I love the Hennigan race versus the Funks. When you look back at that, and that's early 80s when they were over in Japan, and Harley and Larry had hooked up over there, and they also had a match against Brody and Jimmy Snuka. And they also had a match against the Sheik, Ed Farhat, and Mark Lewin over there. But Hennigan race, oh boy, for me, my heart was pumping when I saw that clip, because in the 60s, there was no better tag team in the AWA than the heel Pretty Boy Larry Hennig and Handsome Harley Race. Those two guys in the 60s, when you think about it, the era when they could come out and frustrate the crowd and irritate, Harley doing his, and Harley was only 21, 22 years old at this time in his career, which, by the way, that battle against the Funks, that's nostalgic in itself, because Harley worked a lot in Amarillo for the Funks in the early years, as did Larry. And so it was kind of a homecoming in that match almost. But, when Harley could say, I got the body of Einstein, the face of the goddess of love, and, and I got the body that men fear and women crave. He'd come out with that stuff, and he'd, in the auditorium, when he'd have his match, and he'd point to some guy sitting at ringside, and he'd look at the lady next to him. He'd tell the lady, wouldn't you rather have a real man like this instead of that big fat, how do you not boo this guy? And he got heat. And so that was fun seeing that. They were such a good team. And Crusher and Bruiser as their opponents back then, legendary. The 60s are defined, at least in the AWA, with Hennig, Race, Crusher, Bruiser against each other.
Yeah, also in those clips there was Randy Savage.
Yes.
What are your guys' thoughts on Randy Savage, man? Because I'll tell you what, somebody brought this up recently. I was reading something online, one of the social media sites there, and we're talking about WrestleMania when Savage won the title, and then Hogan came out and he kind of celebrated with him. But somebody asked the question, like hypothetically, if there was no Hogan, would Macho Man Randy Savage have been able to carry the WWF to the level that Hogan did? I absolutely believe he could have. His personality was larger than life, man. He was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think so to a degree, but after that, I don't know.
Not the All-American Hulk Hogan, right? But definitely as a face of the company, I think he could have carried it. I just thought he was such a unique personality. Everybody knows Savage's voice and his mannerisms, and he was always intense. Like, what did you guys think of Randy Savage specifically?
My comment about what you just said about could he have carried the territory if Hogan hadn't been visible? And I think that's the age-old question, because all of us realized that was kind of the breaking point, the starting of eliminating the territories, etc., when Hulk went there. And he came from here in the AWA, we know that. I've always said this, Charlie. I think McMahon would have succeeded, and I think Randy Savage would have been as good a possibility as anyone than anyone else at that time. So I agree with you. He would have succeeded, but it may have taken him just a little bit longer.
Yeah.
I think as much as I am not a Hogan fan, and I never was, but I give the man his due as being the poster child at that right moment at the right time. And then you look at how Savage interplayed with him for a spell there. I think that was the perfect marriage. No, pun intended. That they made it happen probably together. Savage certainly played a part in it, as did the rest of Hogan's opponents, like Paul Orndorff, Mr. Wonderful, and some of those. I mean, we can't downplay that Hogan had the right opponents with what McMahon was feeding him in that very early couple years.
Absolutely.
And so, I think Savage could probably have. It may have taken Vince a little bit longer. Wes, what do you think?
Maybe he would have had to fed Randy a different type of opponent altogether to build over a year or so. I don't think exactly. I don't think there's any way that Savage could not have handled it and taken it, because he had the talent. He had everything going for him. He really did. Not my favorite wrestler, but yes, he had it going, and he could do, in my opinion, he could do a lot of things Hogan could never do.
Right.
So that made a big difference there. George, I'll agree that Hogan is just way down my list. Right person, right time, right everything. Oh my God, everything fell into place at the right time. Lucky him. Could have been me, could have been you, right?
Well, and the thing is, because we've been hearing this now for close to 38 years or whatever it is. When Hulk Hogan jumped from the AWA, Vince McMahon picked the perfect poster child for the dream that he had. Vince Jr. was 33 years old or something at that time, just a young kid, but he had a vision that most of the old school promoters, if they thought of it, they didn't know how to put it together. If they didn't think about it, it's because everything was working fine for them.
Yeah.
A territorial system was running smooth. Why change it if it's not broken? The old theory. And they still, minded their business, the invisible fences. You don't go into my territory, I don't go into yours. But Vince, he needed that one wrestler. And as much as I'm not a fan, Hogan was the man. Yeah. He made it a lot easier. And I do believe that Vince was going to do it no matter what. I do believe he would have succeeded no matter what. But I do think it would have taken him a little bit longer. He's lucky at the time that he got Hogan that he was able to draw a guy like Randy Savage. And I mentioned Paul Orndorff because I think he played a lot in some
Yeah.
of that early success. And then, you know,
Great.
as the $1 Million Man came in, Ted DiBiase, oh my gosh, a perfect foil for the bigger than life Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
So
The twin referees and all that stuff going on at
man,
WrestleMania.
what a gimmick. Wasn't that classic? I mean, I was watching, I followed it through the first half of the 90s before I started.
My two favorite gimmicks back then were the $1 Million Man and Mr. Perfect, because they both were perfect at it. Absolutely 100%.
Yeah. And that's another one. Kurt Hennig. Oh my gosh. You know, when we saw him, of course, I recognized that the guy had talent beyond. He was just oozing with it. And he really formed himself as a heel when he had his brief run as AWA champ as a heel. And then jumping to Vince with that perfect thing. You know, and when you look at some of these characters that Vince created, you look at him and you say, there is no other guy that could have played Mr. Perfect. There is no other guy that could have played $1 Million Man. I mean, I heard somebody years ago, they said, well, Nick Bockwinkel, you know, was considered for the $1 Million Man thing. As much as Nick was great as he was, I honestly could not envision him pulling off the $1 Million Man thing.
Not the way Ted DiBiase did, yeah.
And I think part of it was his age at the time, you know, because he was getting close to where he was winding down his career. But you look at and look, even moving forward, guys, with Stone Cold Steve Austin, there is nobody else that could have become Stone Cold,
right,
and not pull it off the way he did and still does today when he's out there cutting a promo. It just some of these guys. They were in the right place at the right time, and nobody else could have done it better than they did.
100%, George. 100% for sure.
And even as good, you know, we talk about Hogan. We know that Hogan took a lot of his shtick in life from superstar Billy Graham and Jesse Ventura, the Body.
Yeah.
I mean, he admits that. And I saw both of those guys in their respective primes, and I can tell you there was a lot of later on Hogan there, but neither one of those two guys, I don't think, could have pulled off, you know, had they been the same age as Hogan, they couldn't have pulled it off. Jesse wouldn't have been able to do that, nor would Superstar, even if he was a baby. And I saw Superstar as a baby too here for a while.
Yeah.
He was no Hulk Hogan. So Hogan took the best from both of them and then others and just exploded.
Yeah, the rest was history after that. Hulkamania ran wild, and that's what got me into wrestling. You know, the red and yellow, and of course when you infuse Mr. T into the whole thing at WrestleMania 1, I was hooked, man. I was in. You know, so well, guys, let's I was gonna say let's take a quick break, John. I'm sorry, I didn't know if you had a thought there, but all right, we'll do a quick break. Or check in with our sponsors here. We got some more clips on the back end, plus we'll check in on the Iron Sheik as well. So stick with us. We'll be right back.
Digits 988 can save a life. If you or someone you know is having thoughts of suicide or experiencing a mental health or substance use crisis, 988 provides connection to free confidential support. There is hope. The Lifeline works. For 24/7 confidential support, just call, text, or chat 988.
All right, welcome back to the Falls Count Anywhere podcast. Charlie Turner, Chris DiCarlo, John Restino, and as we welcome back a couple of regulars to the show, Mr. George Schire, Mr. Wes Maidment. Guys, I was going to go with, how about the HWO, the Historians World Order? I don't know, maybe that could be our faction name. You know, we make T-shirts. I don't know.
All right, you get them
I
going.
need a hat to cover up my bald spot.
That's the reason I wear mine.
Same here.
Otherwise, the glare, you know, it's like Vern Gagne's head. Larry Henderson, I
I'm
can't see
trying.
him for the glare.
Yeah, but we gotta give a shout out for
Yeah.
or get Wes a half mask or something.
Yes.
We gotta start wearing a hat, Chris, to make these guys feel better. You know what I mean? So
A shout out for John and Wes. Or Toronto Maple Leafs won, I understand.
No,
the opposite.
no,
Oh, sorry.
no,
I
they
heard-
lost.
I
I'm
watched
tired.
the highlights last night. They were pathetic.
Sorry.
How could you not
I
play?
was, you know what? I'm tired. I had to do an autopsy last night about it, so I'm exhausted. I'm a little tired. I was up doing a podcast at like 11. It's just terror. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not talking.
Sorry. My bad. My
No,
bad.
it's okay. No, it's fine.
Maybe next year. You know what I mean?
But I'm
I've been
not a
saying that for a
regular.
long time.
I'm not a regular hockey fan, so see that's why I didn't know that. So my apologies.
Yeah.
But hey,
Sure,
let's-
Chris. Sure.
Yeah.
I'm
Hey,
gonna
go
adjust my
Vegas pulled
glasses.
a nice one.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Adjusting my glasses, guys.
okay. Well, let's get back into classic wrestling. What we're here about, John. Let's roll a clip.
No, I'm all shook up. All right, hold on.
Here we go. The one, the oh, against Greg the Hammer Valentine's father here.
Chris, you cut out. Who is this here? We got
The Crusher against Johnny Valentine.
very good. Some classic black and white footage. I like it.
Yeah, classic. Oh, right off the bat, stomping away.
Oh, let the man take his robe off.
Here we have a six-man tag from the WWA in Indianapolis. You got the Blackjacks and Bobby Heenan there. Look, speaking of midgets, we got the
Yes.
Crusher, the Bruiser, and their midget partner. I don't even know who he was, but they kind of looked like it. Here's a classic one for George. The Crusher, Tommy Rich from Georgia, 1979. Oh,
Whoa.
the Crimson Masks.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that, John.
Yeah.
And he's got a beer in his hand.
I was gonna say, man.
It's great.
Wow.
The
Men
Crusher.
of men right there, brother.
You got to see that short clip of Crusher versus Johnny Valentine. The rest of that clip, Crusher ends up getting disqualified, and he kind of goes nuts around the ringside, and they can't get rid of him. You know,
Oh, man.
I had the honor of seeing Crusher when he was Crusher Lisowski, and I loved him as a heel. Oh man, he was so just so aggressive in the ring. And, you know, through the years, of course, we saw him become more cartoonish as he got older and less mobile, if you want to call it. And the Crusher became more of a character than a bully after he was a good guy. But absolutely. The midget you're talking about was Little Bruiser.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
He was supposed to be a lookalike to and they claimed that match that you're talking about. I don't know who the Blackjacks did. They have a partner in that one, or did they just
Heenan.
Okay, I thought it was Heenan. The deal was is Crusher and Bruiser said they don't need to get a partner, so to insult Heenan, they bring in the Little Bruiser. You know, now that I can get into for the gimmick of it.
Yeah.
You know, Crusher did that back in 1965, 66. It was in his feud with Hennig and Race. He claimed he didn't need a partner, so he went out and he got Lord Littlebrook. And of course, in the match, Hennig and Race beat the little guy up, had him all bloody, and there's the Crusher carrying him out, you know. And then the Crusher's got to get revenge for him, so there's more rematches. In that instance, I'm okay with the little people.
Wes, the Crusher.
There's a picture of the Crusher. I think it was in Ring Magazine on one of the covers, and it's just a shot from about his chest up, and it's a side view. And he was so powerful. His chest looked like it started at about here, and what a powerhouse! And I, most of us would have never got to see the Crusher wrestle, and I didn't live, and I never saw Johnny Valentine wrestle live, but I have to admit, Johnny Valentine is one of my favorite old school wrestlers, because just whether he's a good guy or a bad guy, didn't matter. He was just a kick-ass guy. He kicked the living shit right out of anyone who cared. And he was good with the promo. He was good with everything. And he looked like a psycho, sort of, because you could never tell which way he was going to go.
Right. Well, and one of the things about Johnny Valentine is that most of the wrestlers that worked against him would said that he was a very stiff worker, but Johnny was believable.
Yes.
When he moved in the ring, the move made sense. When he hit an opponent, it looked real. And there's a poster out there, a picture poster that says that Johnny says on it, I can't convince you that wrestling isn't fake, but I can tell you that I'm not, or convince you that I'm not. Something to that effect.
And
I should memorize
his son did the same thing.
Yeah. And Johnny Valentine, he was so good because he could interchange between heel and baby, depending on his opponent or depending on the territory. Now, that clip we saw with Crusher, and that was in 1960 or 61 when that took place, because Crusher was out on the East Coast. And Johnny, of course, was a good guy back then. But then later on in the WWF, he converted to a heel and was huge. Big heel, good one. And I saw him here in 67. He was in the AWA, teamed with Johnny Powers, who I'm sure you remember, Wes.
Yep, you guys in Buffalo area got that National Wrestling Federation from Pedro Martinez in the early 70s, and Valentine held the belt for those guys. And at the time, because one of the things I loved doing back then was seeing where the guys were traveling to and from. And when you start gathering more information and more stuff that was not readily available back then, you see Valentine was a champion like in California and Texas, Detroit, Montreal, Toronto, Buffalo. He was everywhere at one time. He must have been just constantly on the go, wrestling probably six nights a week. And he had everywhere.
He had a title run in St. Louis too, with the Missouri title. Him and Harley had some classic matches. And I had mentioned to you guys earlier that on my old traveling days, that was one of the matches I saw on a St. Louis card was Johnny against Harley. And two interesting individuals, and it was a good match.
Nice.
Probably two of the best. Yeah. And it was really sad that Johnny's career was ended the way it was. But then there's that guy that Ric Flair that kind of moved into the spot after that.
Yeah.
I knew nobody heard of him.
What did I say to you, Wes? Richard Morgan, King Richard.
King Richard, yes.
As Roddy Piper called him, King Richard is dead. The promo.
Now Valentine was getting a little long in the tooth in the plane crash in '75, but he still had quite a few years to go, and he could have easily morphed into more of a tag guy, right? But we got Ric Flair out of the deal. So
one of the things I'm guessing a lot of people wouldn't remember this, but the territory days were so much fun because a guy could be a heel in one territory, and in the other territory at the same time period he'd be a baby. The Crusher, who we just saw, he never, ever got cheers in St. Louis. He turned babyface in 65, January, and he was a babyface for the rest of his career here. But when he went to St. Louis all the way up to 67, he was still a heel there. And that's the beauty of the territories. Now, Johnny Valentine, after his plane crash, some fans may not know this, but he worked with his pretend brother down in Dallas-Fort Worth territory. And he worked as his manager after Johnny couldn't wrestle anymore. He worked as the manager for his brother Dale Valentine, who some fans may not know but that was Buddy Roberts, who was working as Dale Valentine.
You beat me to it, George. I was going to say, I got that exact footage stinking in my head. I got that exact footage. You beat me to it, George. You are right.
To see, I would have loved to have seen Valentine get in the ring with someone like Hans Schmidt, or someone who was just as tough looking and rough looking. They just would have just pounded each other into submission. And I remember reading a long time ago in a magazine, I think it was Killer Kowalski, said, our job is to physically subdue our opponent. And I'm sure when you got in the ring with Valentine, you were physically subdued.
I had the opportunity to see Johnny Valentine, as I mentioned, in that St. Louis match in the early 70s. But he was in the AWA in 1967, and I got to see him. I also had a chance to see him in 1958.
Wow.
When he was in Minneapolis, which was still NWA territory at the time. And he came in with Chet Wallach, and they were the Atomic Blondes. And they came in with pink tights. You got to picture this now for 1958. They had pink tights, and then they had the pink boas that they wore around their neck.
Okay.
And they had the blonde hair, Johnny and Chet, Atomic Blondes. And they strutted.
Great name.
Yeah. And so I remember them briefly. I saw them wrestle against the Brunetti brothers. A good Joe and a great guy.
Yeah.
Brunetti.
Well, we got one more clip, right, John?
Yes, and this is split up into 2 segments. So we'll do the first one's 57 seconds and the next one's a minute. So here's the first clip.
Just go with it, yep. And this one is, of course, called The Lords. Here is a wrestler, commentator, Lord Ethel Layton. And there, yes, you see the Grand Wizard of Wrestling in there. Early footed here, Lord James Blair's. And there he is. This is the Hawaiian territory, which he was down a lot. Lebanon. The original Sheik here.
Yeah.
Let's roll the rest.
All right, hold on. Here comes the next group.
Still, Lord James Blair is then with the AWA towards his stint of career. Oh, look at this, guys.
Wow.
Lord Judo L. Hayes.
Oh, this is great.
Oh, this is great here. Sir Oliver Humperdinck. Well, you gotta see the rest of that someday. Oh, here we go. There you go, the Russians.
Nice.
Wow, there's a lot there.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff. Whoa. All right.
Some classic clips there.
I liked Lord Layton. He was synonymous with this area and Erie, Pennsylvania, Detroit, Windsor, Southern Ontario. He did the T thing in Buffalo, like in the 50s, where he'd go for the break in between falls. He was a great heel. And he wrestled against Whipper Watson, which would have been mind blowing at the time because we all know Layton as a baby face, right? He was big, he was huge, and he was. I talked to him once, just very briefly, and he, you know, it was just, yes, hi, you know, how's it going? Shake your hand and kind of thing. But he was big guy, big guy. And he must have had a fantastic career, because when we would have known him, maybe me and Chris, from Toronto TV, he was older, I should say, right?
Right, as the commentator there, then slapping the original Sheik, and we saw the Grand Wizard up there with the fez.
Yeah, Abdullah Farouk. Yeah, cool.
The Grand Wizard, one of our best. But question for you both, Wes and George: were they really lords, or was it a gimmick?
Get total.
What are you insinuating here?
Yeah,
I didn't know if it was true or not.
I don't think Leighton was supposedly an English lord, and he was from Australia. So, hey, there you go, bang. You know, Blears, George, you know actually where Blears was from?
As far as I know, he was from Hawaii. That's where he originated from. You know, you touched on Lord Leighton, and of course, he was a staple in Toronto and Detroit territory with the Farhat Sheik. Speaking of Farhat, I thought it was interesting that he was going to wrestle a match with Billy White Wolf, who came here as Sheik Adnan Casey. Yeah. I love it when these guys could pull this stuff off. And that was another complete transformation, by the way, White Wolf and Casey, where most fans didn't ever recognize the difference. They were two totally different characters. And, you know, of course, one a babyface and the Sheik is a heel. But as far as Blears, you know, he had a stellar career. He had tag team titles he held with Gene Kiniski back in the earlier 50s. And if anybody has the Wrestler movie, with Vern Gagne from 1974, you'll recognize James Blears as the Hawaii promoter, so to speak, that comes in to deliver the new challenger that can defeat the aging champion, Vern Gagne, Mike Bullard, in the movie. Yeah. And Blears played that part, but he also worked a lot with the AWA afterwards as a commentator and as a guest referee. He was good friends with Nick Bockwinkel through the years. There was a part of that clip where we saw Stanley Blackburn with Lord Blears. So anybody out there, I get asked all the time, was there really a Stanley Blackburn? Yes, folks, there was. He was a real life, living, breathing person.
I have other clips of Stanley too. Yes.
Yep, and he was friends with a lawyer friend of Vern Gagne, and they just given the fictional figurehead title of president. Okay. So that's how that came about. And Stanley was from Amarillo, Texas. You saw the Russians there. You just mentioned them, Chris, and that was Chris Markoff and Nikolai Volkov.
Yeah.
Yes.
Doing the Russian gimmick. Lord Alfred Hayes. Oh my gosh. I was getting programs in the very late 60s, early 70s. I'd get my programs from Lubbock, Texas, from promoter Nick Roberts down there. And Nick Roberts had been a former wrestler, and he had been here in the 60s in the AWA. When I was a little kid, I remembered him. I had sent him off a letter, and I said, you know, I remember you when I was a little younger, and this is in the late 60s. I said, you know, and I wonder if we could trade programs. He went for it. So every week I'd get a program from Nick Roberts, but Al Hayes, he was just Lord Al Hayes in those programs. And I always thought, man, that's a cool name, Lord Al Hayes. Well, later on, he made it Alfred, which was even cooler.
Yeah.
He was, and then you saw the judo part. Excellent worker. I want to tell you guys, the real deal. And him and Billy Robinson, both from England, different parts of England, but they outside the ring had some legit heat. They did not like each other. Their paths came across in the ring a few times. And at the end, very end of Billy's career, when he had done a heel gimmick for a short time, he had Hayes as his manager.
Yeah.
But they did not like each other outside the ring.
Hayes and Robinson worked in Montreal near the end of Billy's career, right?
Yeah.
Because Hayes could speak French, which was really cool.
Right.
maybe not as well as most could, but yeah, he could speak French. And that tea sipping thing was with Cannon, and that would have been probably around that time also. Hayes, I remember seeing him on one of the first shows I went to in Toronto, and I was standing by the ramp, the famous ramp in Maple Leaf Gardens, and I looked up, and this guy came up, and I looked, and I was like, who the hell's that? Because this is like the third main event. Like, this is the, next to the main event. And I'm like, who the? And I said, oh my God, it's my soccer coach. What's my soccer coach? What's my soccer coach doing walking up the ramp? Because it just didn't click. It just didn't click, right? And then it was like, then the sledgehammer hit my head. Oh, geez, it's Lord Alfred Hayes. But yeah, I liked him. I have to admit, I liked him more as a manager, but he was huge in Texas. Going against Dory Jr., there was a big buildup in the magazine.
Yes.
With him and Dory Jr. Wrestling, and he, really, really long career also, like both as a wrestler and a manager, and came from England, and he had he must have been wrestling in England for at least 5 to maybe 10 years, right?
Right. And when he came to the AWA, he obviously was doing the English Lord, and he had that arrogance about him. He was so good on an interview. I mean, you saw that little snippet they showed with him drinking his little tea or whatever it was. He would do things on his interviews, and he wasn't the kind of a guy that would rant and rave and shout like a lot of the heels did, but it was just his presence. Yeah. And we saw him as a manager and as a wrestler here. Saw him wrestle with Roger Kirby. They were Central States Tag Team Champions together. But we saw Hayes with the original Super Destroyer in the AWA, which was Don Jardine, the Spoiler other territories.
Yeah.
And then when Spoiler or Jardine left, we had Hayes manage the Super Destroyers Mark II and III. Which was
4 and 5.
No, we never got. You couldn't count that high. But we had
I know there was 2 and 3. I know
there were 2 and 3, and of course Super D2 was Mark II was Bob Remus, Sergeant Slaughter later on.
Yeah.
Vern Gagne trainee, and then we had Neil Guay, who was Mark III, and we had the chance to see Hayes. He'd feud a lot with the Crusher, and Crusher would call him Elfinko Hayes, not Alfred, Elfinko Hayes. And they had a deal where his suit was ripped off of him. The Crusher had Crusher come out with a blue tuxedo, and he was taking off the gloves, and he slapped Hayes in the face. And of course, Crusher's suit was ripped off. Then they have to have a match and a series of matches. But they turned Hayes babyface against Heenan and the family, the Heenan family.
Yes.
And so that was a great series. And then Crusher was teamed up with Hayes against, so wrestling was so much fun when they could pull this stuff off. Oh, man, great memories.
Let me ask you guys this, because we mentioned Nikolai Volkov, and I know the Russian national anthem because of him, the words. But it made me think of the Iron Sheik. You're right. Made me think of the Iron Sheik because, of course, they were a long-time tag team, and you guys are talking about the original Sheik. Was there ever any animosity or any homage back and forth between the original Sheik and the Iron Sheik? Did they ever acknowledge each other? Did they ever have matches together? I'm not really aware of their history of just those two specifically.
Well, Iron Sheik, of course, Khosrow Vasari. He was trained by Vern Gagne. He came out of the same camp as Greg Gagne and Jim Brunzell and Ric Flair and some of these guys. When he came back to the AWA later, he came back as the Iron Sheik. I want to think it was the first time he was using the gimmick when he came back home here, like in the late 70s. But he had been down in Texas kind of experimenting with different ideas because he wrestled as Hussein Arab for a while, the same type of a gimmick, so to speak. And then there's another name in there. But they never acknowledged anything when he came back that he was Vasari here. He was now the Iron Sheik. I don't believe there was ever any animosity between him and Farhat because Vern, again, that was that territory line where we didn't know. what was going on in Detroit, that there was another Sheik. And then, as I mentioned, with Billy White Wolf out in the East Coast and other territories, he was Billy White Wolf. But Adnan Casey then pulled off the Sheik gimmick here. And I thought he was a tremendous Sheik. I mean, he was, you do not believe the heat that man generated.
Yeah.
I've seen it.
Oh, I mean, we had crowds that legitimately got unruly. Of course, this was also at a time, guys, when you had it was okay to, bring other countries into it and have the racial divide and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, when the Sheik is going to take the title back to Iraq and we're never going to see the champion again, that was huge stuff.
Yeah.
So, no, I don't think there was. And I don't believe that Ed Farhat had any issues, because during that time frame, he was so engrossed in his own territory and big in Toronto, right, Wes? He was huge in Toronto.
There would have been no crossover, whatever. It's like you said earlier about Hogan borrowing from guys.
Yeah.
Someone says, you should throw a Mickey Mouse hat on. You should throw a cafefe or whatever they call it. You should throw a this on, a that on. You should do. How many guys over the years have dyed their hair blonde, or worse, dyed their mustache and their beard and their chest hair blonde, or whatever, right, for the gimmick. So, the Sheik was, at that time, Sheik was fading. The original Sheik was fading. He was older. Iron Sheik was still young. He came here and he was a Canadian champ in Toronto, which basically made everyone forget about the original Sheik, because completely different wrestlers altogether, like night and day. So Casey in General Adnan, whatever they had him out as, he did the work, he did the job, and he was. I didn't see him live or anything, but obviously we see him on videotape now, and you go, okay, that the guy had a long career, another guy who had a long career, and you don't have long careers because you can't fit in somewhere and do what you have to do, right?
Well, I remember when Casey came to the AWA in 1980. I had followed his career a lot, as I saw him early in programs as Adnan Casey when he was very young, but as Billy White Wolf in the Pacific Northwest and down in Texas, obviously out east in the WWF. But when he came here as the Sheik, at first I had to take a back seat and say, okay, I don't know who this is. Of course, I was in the know quickly after that, thankfully, but I thought he went into that gimmick so good, and he was still at that stage in his career where he could work. And I will tell you guys, 3 of the matches that I thought Sheik Casey had, that I consider 3 of the best of all the thousands I saw over the years: Sheik against Nick Bockwinkel. And they did such a great angle with that. Vern Gagne had retired. He had given the title back to Nick because he was the #1 challenger, when he retired. And I remember fans being just frustrated. They should have had a tournament, or Nick shouldn't have had it handed to him. But what Vern Gagne did was genius. He had that summer a series of matches with Nick against Sheik Adnan Casey. And in the first match against them, Heenan came to the ring with Nick, and the Sheik went after Heenan with his sword and hit him in the forehead, busting him open. Heenan's carried out. That got him out of the equation, which I'm going to tell you guys was genius, because Nick might have been the heel if he had Heenan with him. Yeah. So now Heenan's out. He can't interfere. And then Sheik's going to take the title back to Iraq, And the fans were yelling, USA, USA, USA. And Nick was the baby, even though he was still Nick Bockwinkel. Yeah. And the 3 matches were great.
I've seen one in Winnipeg, speaking of which.
The circuit,
Well, I know, guys, we got a couple of things here. Charlie, want to take it away with our tweets
Well,
and our jobber?
yeah, it's a perfect transition here to the speaking of the Iron Sheik, as we always check in on the Falls Count Anywhere podcast with the Iron Sheik tweets. And of course, we don't go more than about 7 days without a mention of the Hulkster. We'll get to that, but the Sheik, he had some opinions on Monday Night Raw talking about Veer Mahan.
Uh-oh.
I don't know if you guys are aware of Veer, but he's been kind of on and off WWE TV. But basically, the Sheik broke it down like, Veer, I'm going to break your fucking neck, WWE Raw hashtag. So he was watching the show, and I'd love to see Sheik come out of retirement and put that jabroni in the camel clutch. That would be awesome. But Veer Mahan getting a little love there, or hate, I guess you will, from the Iron Sheik. Here we go. Now the Sheik, he has some poetry in him, and sometimes he. Well, I'll censor this one a little bit. He's got F words all over the place. 1, 2, F your shoes. 3, 4, F the door. 5, 6, break jabroni's necks. 7, 8, suplex that Hollywood blonde jabroni Hulk Hogan on his effing head. 10, if you're still reading this, go fuck yourself.
Unbelievable.
Classic for sure.
He even made the reader a jabroni on that one. That'd be me. Fuck the jabronis that don't use the turn signal. I rip your fucking head off and go after yourself. I can't agree with this more. I purposely picked this one out because, people want to text when they're driving. They want to mess with the radio when they're driving.
Whatever.
Put on the damn turn signal when you're turning, or else the Sheik will humble your ass.
That's right.
Good.
I always say when I see someone driving a nice new car and they don't use their turn signal, I just kind of shake my head and I go, damn, it's a shame they got a car that doesn't have a turn signal on it for the price they paid for it. But then I've got a friend who, I swear to God, I'll follow you there. I'll follow you. Lead the way. Do you think the man can use a turn signal? I have no idea what he's going to do. So after we're all done, I say, do you realize there's that little lever on the side of the steering wheel? Do you know that it's very easy with your finger? You can your pinky finger, you can move it. He goes, well, I know where I'm going. It's like, it's not for you. Where did you get your driver's license? He says, I know where I'm going, but I'm trying to follow you.
Even if you go old school and just do like the old signal out the window, you're making a left, you're doing one of these, making a right. It's a straight arm.
But then we got to give credit to those jabronis, as Sheiky Baby would call them. We got to give credit to the guy he'll turn his signal on, and you're following him, and you're saying, okay, the guy's going to make a left turn, and then when he gets to the corner, he goes right.
Yeah,
it's like, oh man.
Yeah, those jabronis need to be humble.
The guy who turns it on and never turns it off, and he's driving 4 miles with the light blinking. That's like, God, you're killing me.
Yeah.
Turn signals. You touched a button.
Yeah, we can always use the Sheik as a passenger in those situations. We can just get out and rough these guys
I'd
up.
pick him up. I'd bring him along.
Here we go.
One last one there, John. Yeah, so of course, bagging on Hulk Hogan here again. Now, Bovada asked the question here, and what is he pointing at, basically? And hold the sign that says, free steroids this way. And of course, making fun of Hulkster and that steroid era that Vince McMahon went to trial for at one point. But yeah, look at the size of the arms on the Hulkster, even to this day. He's been doing some recent promos with his son, Nick. They were just promoting a bikini contest at Hooters down in Tampa there, and the Hulkster was still flexing his 24-inch pythons, brother. He's still in pretty great shape there I think he's in his late 60s now.
No, he's a little bit older than that. He's 70-something now.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I think he's 72.
Oh, yeah.
I can't hold mine up because I look like a clothesline. You could put a shirt on it.
Yeah.
You got to get that Hulkamania workout set like I did.
I just did those Charles Atlas workouts from the old comic books back in the day.
Take those Hogan and Four Horsemen vitamins back in the day too.
That's right.
Yeah.
And our jobber of the week.
I was going to say, always entertaining to hear from the Sheik, and of course we want to check in with our enhancement talent or our jobber of the week. Tony Burton was this week's Jobber of the Week, and I found this guy interesting because he kind of had a decent look to him. I didn't have too many photos of him, but he didn't wrestle too many matches, 23 there, and he didn't win any. I went through his record there, but here he is getting roughed up by Jake the Snake Roberts, getting set up for that patented DDT. And I find some of these matches on YouTube, and this is I just screenshot him. Of course, the Damien the Snake there, and the crowd reaction for Jake the Snake for this match. This is just a weekly WWF Superstars taping. Jake the Snake was so over, and we've been talking about Hulk Hogan, and I didn't realize this. And I don't know if you guys know anything about this, but back in the golden era of WWF, I believe this was early '90s. And they never aired it, but there was a rumor or there was a video of Jake the Snake DDTing Hulk Hogan in the Snake Pit. And they never aired it because the crowd went nuts. They absolutely loved it. But of course, Hogan was the babyface, Jake the Snake, who beat up Tony Burton here, poor Tony. But he was instantly over, but they never aired it because Vince McMahon didn't want to go in that direction with Jake Roberts. And I always found that interesting because Jake the Snake, everybody knew who Jake the Snake Roberts was from that era.
Yeah.
And but yeah, it's just I found that interesting that Jake the Snake ever got a title shot in those days, and I thought maybe he deserved it.
I agree.
Yeah, he's a good talent. I liked him. The snake was stupid, but he was good.
Yeah.
The Snake thing was great, and when they worked it with Andre the Giant, with Andre being as big as he was, being afraid of the snake.
Yeah.
That was perfect for an Achilles heel for Andre back in the day.
Oh, definitely. And then, of course, we put the Macho Man's arm and everything. But yeah, shout out again to Tony Burton, the enhancement talent of the week, who put Jake over there in that match. So yeah, very cool stuff. I thought that was very again, like I said, the reaction even for that match for Jake the Snake on the Superstars taping was pretty awesome. So well, guys, I'll tell you what, to watch these clips that Chris has an endless buffet of clips, if you will. And to get some context behind them from you guys, from a couple of wrestling historians like yourself. Like I said, we're the HWO, the Historians World Order. Really, really cool, guys, for you guys to come back. And again, we look forward to it again next month. Some more wrestling clips and some more context to it, because we really enjoy the perspective and the history of it. It's really great.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure coming on with you guys and talking with you and seeing the clips. And George, it's also it's awesome to see you and talk with you. I truly enjoy talking with you, and I'm so happy that the guys here at Falls Count Anywhere hooked us up.
Boy, I don't think I can say it much better than that. Charlie, Chris, you guys have been great. You are great. I love working on the show with you. And Wes, sincerely, it is an honor to have you next to me here as I look on the screen. Yep. And I just think that we could sit at a table, and whether it be beer, coffee, or water, whatever, we could talk a lot and have a lot of memories. I love it. Thank you, man. And thank you for having me on the show always. And John, good job. You're the conductor here. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm the silent one.
Yep. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great weekend, and we look forward to catching up with you guys again next month.
Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you.
God bless.
Take care now, guys. All right. Take care. Man, guys, I'll tell you, like I said, it's awesome just to get that context on these clips from a couple of great historians in the wrestling business that know so much about pro wrestling from back in the day. It's just really, really fun to listen to those stories and listen to their perspectives on when they were growing up in that era and what they experienced as well with those guys. So very, very cool stuff.
Well, real quick, jump in there, John. Let's bring up. We like to thank and appreciate all our fans and viewers across this country and the world. Our home here on Facebook. You can check us out. Of course, this show will air 2:00 this afternoon, and anytime you can watch it. But also, our Twitter is growing at Count Anywhere. I'm on Twitter at least once a day, talking to lots of people and gaining more followers. So that's great. Also, our YouTube channel at Friends with the Z Media Network. Not only our show here, Falls Count Anywhere, but John's show and Spitball and Sports Cuts are all big hits. And I believe we're up to 52 or 54. I'm not sure on the count there. We got to get to 1,000, but
we were at like 11, like 2 months ago. So yeah,
we're getting there. And we thank and appreciate everybody. And also real quick, John, about the Facebook stars.
Yep. If you're watching us right now, which I'm glad you are, thank you. If you'll see the stars icons come up and asking you to give us stars. If you pay 99 cents, you give us 100 stars. 100 stars then goes to us, and we accumulate enough stars. Facebook will give us the opportunity to have Facebook advertising, which helps helps our show grow bigger and better. So all it is 99 cents. We get 100 stars. If you can do it, thank you. If not, I know times are tough. Don't worry about it. Just share our show, like the page, go over there on Facebook, and always help us out. And I appreciate it.
Absolutely. If you are watching today, May the 13th, feel free to check in. We posted on our website, but check in with Herb Simmons there. A lot of legends showing up there at the Aviator Hotel there in St. Louis. There's some videos of JBL, Bushwhacker Butch, Baron von Raschke entering the facility there, and they just got a really, really awesome day ahead. And we'll try and post some updates on that throughout the week as we get some footage or whatever the case from Mr. Herb Simmons. So, good luck to them as they run that event today on May the 13th. But guys, before we sign off, we are a show of the people here. John, I know we have some public service information we always like to provide at the end of the show here.
And May is Mental Health Month. So 844-794-3812. Please call that number 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you feel depressed, anxieties, just you're sick of it, you can't take it no more, because everyone can feel that way. Money's tight. The world is wild and crazy. So 844-794-3812. There's someone standing by 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They will speak to you for hours and hours if you need them and help you in your own community find somewhere, or just talk to them all the time. 988 is the number to call if you're feeling suicidal and you don't think you can take it anymore. 988. Please call that number. They're professional, waiting to talk to you. We did find out that someone that watches one of our shows did make the call and told us that they were incredible and spoke to them for 6 hours.
Wow.
So please give that 988 a call.
Even if it just reaches one person, like that, to reach out to them and get some help, that's fantastic to hear. And guys, as we roll along here, next week, we have a WWE pay-per-view on the horizon there. We got some AEW to talk about. They got the big show in Wembley coming up in August. They're selling tickets like crazy. But the new World Heavyweight title in WWE, we have a final now, and I'm pumped about this final.
Yes.
It is AJ Styles and Seth Rollins at the Night of Champions in Saudi Arabia. I'm personally pulling for AJ Styles. He's 44, 45 years old, so he's not a spring chicken anymore like us, right? I think he deserves another title run before he hangs it up. I'd love to see him win it, but definitely looking forward to that match. I think it's going to be a classic between Seth Rollins and AJ Styles for the new World Heavyweight Championship at WWE. But
I agree, but it's also.
Hope you cut out.
I agree with you, Charlie. AJ Styles, love AJ Styles from day one, but they're both good. So,
yeah, whoever wins, I'm happy. I think it's a great final. Some people were maybe expecting Edge to be in the final there against Seth Rollins, which also would have made sense. But I just love it. I love AJ Styles and Seth Rollins, both as performers on the mic and whatever the case. So I think it's fantastic to see that. We'll definitely talk about that next week. But guys, again, have a great weekend. It was a great show. And again, thank you to Mr. Wes Maidment and Mr. George Schire for joining us. And we'll see you guys again next week. We look forward to it again.
Yes,
thank
thank
you,
you.
guys.